Yeah.
So on one hand, maybe one day I'm plugging a great documentary, like 16 shots, and then on another day, interviewing some Hollywood star from the back of the day.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's like the poster collection here.
Yes,
Tarkovsky.
that's right.
Simbene. I didn't know Sinetic represented Simbene. And Orson Welles.
Yeah. A Pooh trilogy. Yeah. So, because they have the Criterion.
Of course.
Yeah, the Criterion. And these are all Criterion. Oh, and one other thing before we get to the meat of the conversation, which is, of course, 16 Shots, premiering on Showtime on the 14th of June?
Yes.
Okay, good. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock Central. I don't know. That's probably 8 o'clock Central.
It would be 8 o'clock Central.
8 o'clock Central, that's right. Don't ever correct me on my show. That's Rick Rowley. I accidentally ran into a short of yours that you shot for somebody. It was I'm on, I don't know if it was I'm simultaneously on a jury for one festival, and I'm on the screening committee for the New York Film Festival. So I watch all shorts for the...
Oh, like scripted shorts?
Yeah.
So you watch
no, documentaries too, but many scripted right now. So I watched the short that you just shot recently, and I didn't know it until the end, and I'm looking, and it was beautiful, but it was like...
Yeah. The Rejectors. Was that
the Rejectors, that's what it's called.
Yeah, it was really fun. I love, like, jumping over into
that was nice. I don't know that I noted your name on it, but I may have just not noticed it if you shot something. But that I think it's at the Lighthouse International Film Festival.
It is, yeah.
You're going to go to that?
No,
you don't have time to do that. No. You're going to be about to premiere a film. You got a lot of running around to do, right?
Yeah, completely. And then I'm starting up another project, so I'm off in the field for that too at the same time.
Okay, all right. So as a director, the next one, or
as a director, yeah.
Oh, okay. Have you made some sort of intentional shift, or it depends on the project? You're going to keep going as also a cinematographer?
I mean, I mostly direct now, and
okay.
It's rare I have time to shoot as well.
Right. Yeah, you're creating a thing of your own after all, and it's hard to call something you're only shooting your thing because it's usually not.
Yeah. No, completely.
So you want to tell your own stories. So,
yeah.
16 Shots. It was terrific, first of all. It's nice to tell a story where, on some level, there's a catharsis, right, in the story.
Yeah.
And how it plays out.
We had no idea.
Depending who you are, I guess.
There's catharsis and reaction, so I think everyone gets a catharsis. That's
true.
And we had no idea there would be an ending like that to the film when we started. When we started shooting this 3.5 years ago, we thought it would be 12 months and we'd be done, because no one really had any handle on how the judicial process would unfold. So we finished the film. We were like ready to go, DCP, like ready for festival screenings, and then we finally got real clarity on when the trial was going to happen. So Showtime loved the film, and we're incredibly lucky. They were flexible enough and cool enough to let us not release it, to spend another year.
That is nice. But they knew they were going to get something potentially that much more special.
Yeah,
more powerful.
And it is. I mean,
it is definitely.
The moment of the verdict. I was filming out in front of City Hall, and so there's maybe 150 activists gathered there, not a small group, and everyone is there because they know that it's going to be not guilty. That this police officer who shot Laquan McDonald 16 times is going to be acquitted, and they're ready to rush into City Hall and lock it down and be dragged out of there by the cops. And so they're sitting around, leaning into their cell phones, hooking their cell phones up to megaphones that broadcast the verdict out. And as the verdict is read, 16 counts, guilty on every one, people are just weeping in the street. It's this incredible moment of kind of public intimacy that I've rarely seen, because people believed, absolutely believed in their hearts that there was no chance of a guilty verdict. So it was like a tear was opening in the fabric of political reality, and they were seeing a completely impossible thing happen in front of them.
I'm reminded of 2 presidential elections. The last one, with a certainty and not having that outcome.
Yeah.
But that certainty, we've been, only flipped. And then the 2 elections before.
Completely.
In 2008.
Yeah.
Right? 2008? the first Obama,
Yeah.
where people were crying and couldn't believe it. I mean, it's those moments. I relive them, even though this film is not about presidential elections, but it's about moments, like you say, that are intimate and so public at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel so privileged to be a documentary filmmaker because it's our job is to try to find a way to be at these moments when history feels like it's just opening up on a hinge.
Yeah. Well, you now have 2 cases, because I'm thinking of Dirty Wars and now 16 Shots, where you have a journalist at the center, in a way your avatar, or our avatar maybe, or this moral center, this voice. This case, it's Jamie
Calvin.
Who's an independent journalist, or does he write?
He's an independent journalist,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's it's more impressive.
I mean, Jamie is one of the sort of poles of this, because he, I think, the outsider truth seeker who refuses to accept the official version of events and pushes deeper is definitely a useful sort of vehicle to this. The other character that I think carries us through is Will Calloway.
Yes, who's the African American.
Yeah, a young black activist.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, he sees in Laquan, he sees himself, and he's the one who ends up suing the city, and in the case that forces them to make the video public.
Right. The video, for those listening, is the dashboard camera footage of Jason Van Dyke, who's the police officer who shot the young man, essentially a child. Right? How old is
17 years old.
17, okay. And Laquan McDonald, right? And while you were telling that your amazing reaction to, or you were describing that moment, which is the sort of I'd say probably the seminal moment of the film, the verdict. I was wondering, should we be, even though this is news, it's public information, of course, but I'd like sometimes to treat it as though it weren't, and maybe to hold off on on getting specific about that part of the film. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, we've already discussed it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's
doesn't
fine.
matter.
It doesn't matter.
I say I could also hold it off, so people may want to go and see it, because the other thing is there's been this obviously dozens of these police shootings, where the police has shot and killed a black person or killed a black person, and there's been a lot of these cases in the last decade or so. So there's a blurriness to some of the cases, especially when they're not in your own city.
Yeah. I mean,
I didn't remember Laquan McDonald, I'm sad to say.
I know it's sort of tragic. There's a litany of names, and we use these names as shorthand for these thousands of tragedies that happen. And in Chicago, there are 30 to 60 police shootings a year. So every week,
a police officer shoots a citizen of the city.
Mm-hmm. So every week or every other week. Over the course of our lifetime, that's thousands of people who have been shot by the police, and we know the names of a tiny group of them, even people who pay very close attention. Mm-hmm. So the fact that this case kind of punched through, and this case wasn't forgotten like all the other ones, is really incredible. And because in the 180-year history of the Chicago Police Department, no officer has ever been charged with murdering a black citizen, ever.
Right. Even this officer, Jason Van Dyke, had a number of incidents on his record, correct?
He had over 20 civilian complaints against him at the time.
And none of them were followed through in any level.
Yeah, he was never, and he had never been disciplined for any of them. So, I mean, this... in fact, the city had even paid out a settlement of $130,000 to settle a case alleging that he beat a suspect in custody. And he wasn't reprimanded. It had no repercussions on his career. He was protected by the department and by the city who paid out the settlement. So this is not the story of one bad cop.
No, clearly.
It's a story of an entire system
and culture,
and a culture that produces these cases and also makes these cases disappear.
Right. And it's interesting how all those people that deny the code of silence have a vested interest in the police department or are just white people. I'm not a white apologist, but it's hard to watch this film and just say, come on. I mean, really, you're going to say there's no... I mean, it just seems just like, how stupid do you think we are? One thing that confused me, because there's the actual incident, the shooting, and the murder or killing, depending who you're talking to, and the subsequent cover-up. And it felt like, for the most part, until your title card at the end, the cover-up just seemed to fall by the wayside, where those months or year following that, until they finally did release the video, the complete video, that there was a lot of people involved, a lot of very powerful people involved in trying to make this go away, this story.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that compelled us to make this film was that we know more about this case than is known about any other police killing in history. And it's not just the video that's been released; it's the whistleblowers and the witnesses who came forward. It's tens of thousands of pages of internal communication between the different departments of the city that were the journalists sued the city and forced them to release. So we are able to paint a granular picture with granular detail of how this kind of cover-up happens. So it begins with the first beat officers who respond on the scene, who destroy evidence and intimidate witnesses. It continues through the press, and the press is, just turning the page in this case and not investigating because there's hundreds of them, and why pick this one? Goes up to the prosecutors, to City Hall, to the politicians. So by the end of it, you see how everyone becomes, in one way or another, complicit in this machinery.
Right. So we see just about everybody during this period of time, though, of the investigation or / cover-up period, either step down, decide not to run, right?
Yeah. No, heads rolled.
Yeah. And a lot of people being tossed under the bus here too, right?
Yeah, completely. So yeah, I mean,
to keep the system in place.
Yeah.
Essentially, even the verdict seemed to be, in the end, just another solution to keeping this system of corruption in place, because they said this cop's got to be a patsy. I mean, he's a patsy who happened to be guilty, but he is still a patsy because he became the guy that had to pay the price. However, he was given a very light sentence in the end, and nobody else is there's no follow through with the cover up aspect of it.
Yeah, no, completely. To get back to your penultimate question. No, totally.
Yeah. About all the losses of...
Yeah. So when heads really started to roll in this case, I mean, the chief of police, police superintendent was fired. The powerful state's attorney was defeated by an unknown challenger. The mayor himself didn't run again, dropped out of the campaign the day before the arguments began at the trial. And when the institution shook up like that, people started to turn on each other, which is an amazing moment to be in as a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah, you could see it,
because everyone wanted to talk then. Everyone wanted to talk, and were willing to reveal things about the way the process happened that they wouldn't have been if the system was continuing to function as it normally did.
Yeah, well, they were being thrown under the bus, and they were like, well, wait a minute, I've been holding the secrets all these years and playing the game, and then all of a sudden I'm being betrayed by the very people who I was backing up,
Yeah, no, completely.
So they were like, well, F that.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity, and I'm also one of the things that just amazed me is the level of candor that everyone has. The police officers, the head of the FOP, the FOP spokesman, the
What's
police
the
superintendent.
FOP?
The Fraternal Order of Police. It's the Chicago's very powerful police union. They went on camera and they spoke with a kind of total clarity and transparency about their views of this case. I mean, Dean Angelo, the picture that emerges is that they believe the police is an institution that's under attack from all sides. It's under siege.
I know.
And they have to defend everyone and everything, right, even when things are questionable.
Yeah.
And the head of the police union says, no one is looking at the fact that what we need to do is go after the monsters on the street who don't belong on the street with, like, you or my wife or my daughter, and that Laquan wasn't. He says It's not like we're talking about an Ivy League college kid here.
Right. Yeah. Right. And the Oxford.
Yeah, an Oxford
like an
scholar.
Oxford scholar is just unbelievably insulting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but makes it clear that I think Jamie Calvin articulates this at one point. You have, on the one hand, all the facts that have emerged about this case that present one sort of narrative, and then the other narrative is just built on fear, on this kind of racial fear.
Right.
And at the end, in many ways, that's what this film is about. It's the battle over story. I mean, you have the same 16 shots that everyone knows happened. Jason Van Dyke shot Laquan McDonald 16 times and he died. Everyone knows that. Mm-hmm. Was he a victim or was he an offender? Was he a child or was he a suspect? Was it murder or was it, justifiable homicide? The jury has decided, but the battle over the meaning of this story isn't over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for those who watch this, again, it's going to be on Showtime, so if you want to use your parents' subscription to log in with that, I don't know how people do.
It'll have a short run in New York too, beginning.
Very good.
Yeah,
right. Theatrical.
New York and LA, yes,
and Los Angeles. So, not Chicago.
So there's a premiere in Chicago on Tuesday, the 4th.
It's a one-off. Is that?
It's a one-off. Yeah, it's the first.
Okay.
The first screening.
So go check out Theatrical. You can count on a good-looking film. Rick Rowley shot it too, but you'll want to make sure you stay through the very, very ending. Not that most people don't, but pay attention. I think what you just brought up in terms of how Laquan was described as either a victim or an offender. There's a very pointed little snippet of the original backup call. What is it? What do you call it?
Moments after. That's sort of the point. Moment.
Yeah.
I can describe it. It's okay. There's no spoilers in documentaries. It's all right.
Well, there are.
There are lots
nowadays,
of spoilers in documentaries
nowadays.
now.
But yours is a public story that played out in the news, so it's true.
So the very last moment in the film is the first.
Three identical strangers. You're going to tell me it's okay to give away
right.
the triplets? If
you'd read Larry Wright, like all his reporting, right, you'd know much of it.
That's true.
But so the very end of the film is the first moment that the story is told, the story that will be fought over forever now. Laquan has just been shot. The dispatcher is radioing in to the cops on the scene and asks, I need to get the status of the victim's condition. And the officer says, offender.
That's what I meant.
That's what I meant.
That's what the response is.
So that's the very first moment where they've decided, where they've triangulated Laquan's position. He's not a victim. He's an offender.
Right.
And everything about the story that they tell from then on is to try to make him the offender.
Right.
And not the victim.
And it's so interesting how quickly the dispatcher, or whomever that was, understood. Like she just said in response, she goes, "That's what I meant." Like, it's not even something she had to think, what does he mean? Why is he, it's just the culture, as you said,
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I really, I found myself very brought in on a dramatic story as it unfolded, and kind of frustrated with the same old, it's so odd. Maybe it's also with this particular presidential administration where somebody's so blatantly lying all the time, and we all just sort of agree on it now. And then when you step down from that and you see it on a more authentic scale, but it's still like, come on, now we've gone beyond this point where we're really, where people believe what you're saying. I'm talking about, the average defenders of the police, and there's one of the arguments for, as we wind down here, the defense of Officer Van Dyke was that, he comes from the suburbs. He's never saw a black person before. He was scared for his life, Well, it's called police training. I mean, what are you supposed to teach these guys if not to keep their cool and, shoot once if you feel threatened in the arm? Nobody would even think twice to look into the crime or look into this instance.
Yeah. I mean, Van Dyke's attorney makes it very clear to us. He says, we knew there was no chance we were going to convince the entire jury not guilty.
Yeah.
We just needed to convince one person who would buy into our story about fear.
The story.
And he has these two amazing moments in his opening and closing arguments where he invokes film. He's like, think about this like a horror movie. When the monster is walking down the street, you're not really afraid. But when he turns and locks eyes with you, then the music starts playing, and the director knows he's got you. So he's describing Laquan as a monster in a horror film.
Right. Yeah.
And that's
this is the strategy.
Yeah, completely. Yeah,
well, Rick, it's so great to finally, I do this podcast for years, and we did do once a thing on Brick.
We did.
With Dirty Wars when you were
Completely.
shortlisted or nominated. I can't remember. I think you were still shortlisted. But it's great finally to
absolutely
have you on my podcast. I feel like...
I love it.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
great talking to you. Take care.